Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 10 important articles for a detailed and comprehensive analysis so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. So before we start, if you guys are liking our initiatives, do support us with your likes and comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Then we have a very important announcement. Those who are preparing for 2026 and 2027, you have a golden opportunity to enroll for our online classroom program, that too at discounted prices. We have a new batch starting from 28th Feb, the Ignite batch. This will give you access to all the live lectures from our top educators, along with the study material, the test series, and as well as mentorship and doubt resolution sessions. You can avail this program at a flat 60% discount. A 15-month subscription is available at 23,499 and an 18-month subscription is available at 24,999. Now, how can you avail this offer? All you have to do is click on the link provided in the video description and enter the code IAS English. You have to enter the code IAS English to avail the 60% off. Apart from that, Unacademy is presenting a mega event on the 1st of March. Unacademy Aarambh, which is focused on IIT, JEE and NEET aspirants. So if you know any aspirants, do let them know to attend the event live from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on JEE Nexus YouTube channel by Unacademy. This will give them an opportunity to interact with all their top educators, influencers, and there are some exciting rewards as well for the aspirants. Then please join my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code, because after the session ends, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. With this, let's get started by looking at the first article from page number 6. This column, which is co-authored by Gyaan, is very, very important to understand the effectiveness and the implementation of an important government scheme, Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. See, UPSC definitely focuses upon important government welfare programs, not only for prelims, even for mains. So, important schemes like Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana can be very relevant for our exams. You should not only understand the basic facts regarding these welfare schemes, but you should also be able to analyze its implementation and effectiveness in achieving the social outcomes. So, these detailed articles and columns that Hindu brings out will actually help us understand how these government schemes are functioning. And since it is co-authored by Gyaan, it is actually a very valuable article for our exams, because Gyaan is a well-noted social scientist, economist. Though he is of Belgian origin, he has adopted India as his home, and he has played a big role in the past under the former UPA governments in inspiring and framing some of the welfare programs, starting from Manrega to National Food Security Act to Right to Information. Some of these pioneer welfare schemes, it had a contribution from this popular economist and social scientist. But however, before I start, I would like to tell you that this article definitely has a bias. The article is criticizing the implementation of this critical scheme, but I would like to tell you that the article does provide a biased view, a biased opinion, especially because the authors are attacking the direct benefit transfer. They are basically calling the conditional transfer, cash transfer scheme, which is now provided through digital transfers through Aadhaar enabled bank accounts. They're calling it a digital tyranny. Of course, there are flaws in the implementation of the program. There are major drawbacks as well as far as the new methods of implementing this critical program is concerned. But to call DBT as digital tyranny is actually a little biased, a little unfair, because a scheme like DBT, which is provided for cash transfer, which provides for more accountability, more transparency, though it has certain shortcomings and drawbacks, you can't refer to it as digital tyranny. So that's where I find the view of the authors a little biased. But let's keep that away. Let's filter that out and look at a very balanced view of the implementation of this critical scheme. So before we start, we should understand what is this welfare program, the Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Especially for prelims, there can be certain facts which can come as a question. So let's understand what is the scheme all about, and then we'll analyze its implementation. This flagship program was launched in 2017 as a centrally sponsored direct benefit transfer scheme. Sponsored by the central government, and the cash benefit which is provided to the targeted beneficiaries is provided through direct benefit transfer, where the cash benefit is directly transferred to the bank accounts which are linked with the Aadhaar of the targeted beneficiaries. So this ensures that leakages can be prevented, because whenever you're talking about a cash transfer scheme, there can be a lot of leakages that can happen in the system because of the corrupt nature and the inefficient nature of the bureaucratic system. So direct benefit transfer, where direct deposits are made into the beneficiaries' bank accounts, which are verified with Aadhaar linked, Aadhaar seeded bank accounts, it has helped in curbing the leakage of funds with regard to such welfare programs. Now, who are the target beneficiaries of this scheme? As the name itself indicates, Matru Vandana Yojana, the focus obviously are pregnant women, those who are in the informal sector, those who are from the unorganized sector. Because when a woman gets pregnant, this could result in loss of wages for the woman. She may not be able to work, especially in the unorganized sector, because women have no formal protection in the unorganized sector. So during times of pregnancy, as they are not able to work and this could result in loss of wages, this affects the financial and even the health of the pregnant women. The financial well-being and as well as the health of the pregnant women could be affected. This could prevent the pregnant women from accessing the right nutrition, the right health care. So that is the reason why this targeted program was launched, the Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, so that it can provide for targeted cash transfers to pregnant women in the unorganized sector to compensate for their their wages which are lost during their term of pregnancy. The scheme mainly focuses on socially, economically backward classes of the society and provides for a conditional cash transfer scheme. Provided if the pregnant woman meets certain conditions, accordingly a cash transfer is provided into the bank accounts through direct benefit transfer. This is designed to ensure that the pregnant woman is incentivized to access institutional health care. Because see, the goal is to bring down maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate, which had been quite high in India many decades ago. So one of the global targets as well under Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals has been to reduce infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate. One way to achieve that is to ensure that pregnant women have access to institutional health care. They should have access to hospitals, doctors. They should have access to the right medicines. They should have access to the right nutrition, which could be very difficult for women from socially, economically weaker classes. And especially if they are suffering from loss of wages because of pregnancy, since they are not able to work, they are not able to carry out the manual work. This further affects them financially and prevents them from accessing good nutrition and good health care. So the whole idea of this program is to place these conditions and create an incentive in the form of cash transfer so that pregnant women can be pushed to access institutional health care. So if they meet those conditions and criteria, then the conditional cash transfer is done through the DPT system. Under this scheme, the cash transfer is available for the first 2 living children that a woman is going to bear. However, it is restricted actually to 1 child in order to ensure that we don't incentivize having more children. But it is extended to the second child only if the second child is a girl child. As per the latest changes that have been done to the scheme, the benefits of the scheme is available only up to 1 birth, 1 childbirth per woman. It is given to the second childbirth as well, only if the second child is a girl child. Is that clear? This in a way helps in tackling the problem of female infanticide as well, female feticide as well. So a cash subsidy or an incentive is provided up to 5,000 rupees, and it is given out in 3 installments. And for each installment to be delivered, there is a condition which has to be met. The first installment of 1,000 rupees is delivered when the pregnancy is registered in a healthcare facility by the pregnant woman. Then the second installment of 2,000 rupees is paid by the government when the pregnant woman completes 6 months of pregnancy with at least one antenatal checkup at a designated healthcare facility, usually at a government-run healthcare facility. Then the last installment of an additional 2,000 rupees is received after the birth of the child, and the birth of the child is registered, which means the childbirth should happen in a institutional healthcare facility, usually in government hospitals. And once the birth of the child is registered, the last installment of 2,000 rupees is also given. Apart from these 5,000 rupees given through Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, there is an additional 1,000 rupees which is provided through Janani Suraksha Yojana, post-institutional delivery. So in total, a pregnant woman from the informal sector is eligible for 6,000 rupees as an incentive, so that it takes care of the loss of wages and encourages the woman to access good nutrition and good institutional health care. This will play a big role in bringing down infant mortality rate and as well as maternal mortality rate. That is the whole idea behind this flagship program. But however, the writers are critical of the government, the central government in particular, which has reduced the focus on this critical scheme. And the writers believe that this is a violation of the legal right which has been entitled to pregnant women in the country. See, under the National Food Security Act of 2013, which was brought out under the then UPA government, a legal right has been provided to pregnant women to access good nutrition, to access the right nutrition. This is a right that pregnant women enjoy with regard to maternity benefits. The National Food Security Act covers all pregnant women except those in the formal sector. Essentially, it covers those in the unorganized informal sector, promising maternal benefits up to 6,000 rupees per child, with the concept of universal maternity entitlements with no additional conditions. But the way in which Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana has been implemented, according to the writers, it is a violation of this legal right that the National Food Security Act had provided for pregnant women. Now, why are the writers having such a strong opinion about the implementation of this program? To understand that, we need to look at the effectiveness through which the program has been implemented. What is its coverage? What is the budgetary allocation being provided? And are pregnant women really receiving up to 5,000 rupees with up to an additional 6,000 rupees? Is it really being delivered to pregnant women? That is the big question the writers are asking. Now, if you look at the total benefits that pregnant women are receiving, it comes to around 6,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees from Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana and another 1,000 rupees from Janani Suraksha Yojana after institutional delivery is guaranteed. So total of 6,000 rupees is being delivered, which is also a commitment that was made under National Food Security Act. But the problem the writers are pointing out is that 6,000 rupees in 2013 was already a meager amount, but that's what the government could deliver at that point. So providing 5,000 to 6,000 rupees even today in 2024-25 is a big disservice, because the amount is no way sufficient for women to access good nutrition and good health care. Because see, please understand, in a patriarchal society, women share the burden of taking care of the entire family, right? So women may not even have access to good food and good nutrition. And this applies for the infant child as well, post-delivery. And women might even be forced to work outside after taking care of the family and the familial responsibility. And they might suffer loss of wages, which restricts their financial independence and restricts their access to good nutrition and good health care. So given these social circumstances in India, it's very critical to deliver state support through such important welfare programs. So the writers are pointing out that providing 6,000 rupees is still not sufficient. The amount should have been increased by now, at least up to 12,000 rupees. That has not happened. And more importantly, the budgetary allocation has gone down. The overall coverage of the beneficiaries has come down significantly in the last few years. That is the big concern the writers are expressing. Just look at the budgetary allocation. In the 23-24 budget, only 870 crore rupees was allotted by the central government. According to writers, if 6,000 rupees has to be delivered to pregnant women in the country in the informal sector, we need at least a budget of 12,000 crore rupees. So just a fraction of that is allotted by the central government, which means the government is not keen on covering all the intended beneficiaries. A number of deserving beneficiaries are being left out. They're not receiving the benefits. Many of them are not able to meet the conditions as well. Plus, because of direct benefit transfer and some of the shortcomings in the digital transfers which are being done, there are many exclusions which are happening. Many targeted beneficiaries, eligible beneficiaries are getting left out because of the failure to link their Aadhaar with their bank account, or because of the issues in the IT enabled systems which enable the digital transactions. So these flaws within the implementation of the program has led to exclusion of a number of eligible beneficiaries, and overall budgetary allocation has dropped significantly over the years to just 870 crores when the actual requirement should be around 12,000 crores. Apart from that, the ministry that is responsible for implementing it, the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare, is not providing adequate information in the public domain. See, under Right to Information Act, we have section number 4, which mandates all government entities to publicly disclose information which is of a basic nature, which is of public relevance, to disclose such information on a proactive basis. Without even receiving a RTI request, ministries and government departments are encouraged, are mandated in fact under section 4 of RTI Act, to proactively disclose any public relevant information. Now, if you look at such a welfare program, the information related to its implementation and its effectiveness is obviously public information. It's supposed to be accessible and available to the public. But most of the data is not released by the ministry. And writers who have accessed the information through the RTI route, they are pointing out the alarming numbers that points to the decline of the program, and its declining coverage is quite alarming according to the writers. In 2019-2020, couple of years after the program was launched, its effective coverage rate was 36%. Now, what is effective coverage? Effective coverage refers to the percentage of the beneficiaries who are covered in the first installment. Since the cash transfer is happening in 3 installments, effective coverage is a parameter used to gauge the working of the program. So, effective coverage tells us the percentage of beneficiaries who are being covered in the first installment, and that number is just 36%. Out of the total targeted beneficiaries, only 36% of pregnant women are receiving the first installment, which means second and third installment will be given to even lesser number of women. The coverage would be lesser than this. If in the first round itself the coverage is just 36%, imagine how it can drop in the second and third installment. Now, this effective coverage has dropped significantly. By 21-22, it had seen a decline. There was a slight improvement to 33% in 22-23, but look at the drop happening in 23-24. An exponential decline in effective coverage to hardly around 8.5 to 9%. So, according to the authors, right now under this flagship program, only 9% of the intended beneficiaries are getting the first installment, which means 91% almost beneficiaries are getting left out. So no wonder the reduction in budgetary allocation and the flaws in the implementation is affecting the intended beneficiaries. That's why the writers are arguing that right to maternity benefits guaranteed under National Food Security Act is not being delivered by the central government. They do have a very valid point over here. Now, what is the reason for the failed implementation of this program? One major problem is the technical challenges being faced within the ministry. The authors have consulted with officials of the ministry who have anonymously informed the software problems they have faced, which has hampered the disbursement of the cash transfer. Though applications are being received, it's not that number of women applying for the benefits has gone down. The applicants remain the same, the beneficiaries remain the same, but the disbursement rate has gone down significantly because the ministry is not able to process these applications due to a software glitch, which has affected the ministry for many months and it has not been fixed within the ministry. Then apart from that, the writers are pointing out the shortcomings of DBT. See, a lot of critics have pointed out the shortcomings in DBT where cash transfers won't happen even because of the slightest of errors. Many times beneficiaries are not able to link their Aadhaar number with their bank account, or sometimes beneficiaries are not able to provide the right biometrics. Usually in rural areas, those who carry out hard manual labor, their fingerprints would have become little eroded, right? There won't be a fingerprint match, or biometrics would be wrongly entered, or some of their biometric details, their basic details are wrongly entered due to typographical errors. And many times beneficiaries are denied access to government schemes even though they are eligible for the benefits of the scheme. So many such exclusions are getting reported. Definitely there is a problem with DBT, but that is not a reason to refer to DBT as a form of digital tyranny. The writers call it digital tyranny, meaning they take a stand against digital transfers. The DBT scheme has done phenomenally well to reduce leakage and bring down corruption and ensure the targeted beneficiaries are reached out with these cash transfers. Of course, there could be shortcomings and flaws, but to call the whole scheme itself a digital tyranny, which is leading to such exclusions, I think is a little unfair and a little biased as well on the part of the authors. But they are correctly pointing out the flaws, the software glitches which is hampering disbursement, the errors with DBT system which is preventing eligible beneficiaries from getting the benefits. These are the problems which the government needs to solve, the implementation related problems. But to solve the implementation related problems, the government needs to focus on the program. The government has to provide a higher budgetary allocation, which is the root of this problem. Now see, in the formal sector, pregnant women don't face these problems in general. Those who are employed in the formal industry, they get 26 weeks of paid maternity leave, which is almost double the mandated standard from WHO. WHO recommends 14 weeks of maternity leave, but through the amendment that was done to the Maternity Benefits Act in 2017, maternity benefits have been extended to 26 weeks, which means a working woman in the formal industry gets 26 weeks of fully paid maternal leave, which is necessary to take care of herself and the child. But think about those women in the informal unorganized sector. See, most of our workforce is in the informal unorganized sector. They have no such benefits. A pregnant woman in the informal sector has no such benefit or advantage. They have to work, they have to go out and carry out manual work, or else they won't earn anything. So it will result in loss of wages when they are pregnant, and especially if the health of the pregnant woman is preventing them from working, they are denied these wages. They can't earn during those days. Especially daily wage earners, they get deprived of their wages, which will affect them financially, which in turn affects their ability to access good nutrition and good health. So that is why a scheme like Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana is necessary to compensate for those loss of wages, to encourage women to access good nutrition and institutional health care. But the lack of focus from the government, the low budgetary allocation, and the failures in implementation, the problems in implementation is what is affecting this critical program. So based on this, take up a practice question. There can be a mains question. UPSC might ask you to critically evaluate the implementation of Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Now that you know all the details about the program and its implementation, I think you can provide a fair assessment and even suggest a way forward as to how the scheme can be improved, how it can be made better. So you can suggest that the flaws with DBT needs to be plugged, the implementation related problems in the ministry, the software glitches can be fixed, but for that, it requires higher budgetary allocation. The government needs to pay more attention to such a critical program. Justify your argument why pregnant women in the informal sector need state support. You can draw the comparison between women in formal sector and informal sector, which we discussed, and make a strong argument why schemes such as this is very crucial to bring down infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate. So let's see how many of you can write a good answer for this question. Please post your answers in the comment section as well. Now let's look at another column on page 7. This article is written by R.K. Vij, a former IPS officer, and the writer has a message for DMs, the district magistrates, and the police force regarding certain provisions of the criminal justice laws in the country. The writer is mainly talking about section 223 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which replaced the Indian Penal Code, and is also referring to section 163 of Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, which replaced the Criminal Procedure Code. Now, these provisions of the new criminal laws apparently have been misused in Indore. See, the Indore administration in Madhya Pradesh, it has been trying to tackle the problem of begging. It has been trying to eradicate beggary. And the DM of Indore, who is a IAS officer, has issued a prohibitory order by using the extraordinary power which is available to the DM of a district under section 223 of the BNS. Section 223 of BNS was previously section 188 of Indian Penal Code. Now, under this extraordinary provision, the DM, who's also known as Deputy Commissioner, District Collector in different states, essentially the one who heads the district administration, has this extraordinary power to prohibit certain activities. There are certain grounds on which few activities can be prohibited. I'll explain that. By using this extraordinary provision, the DM of Indore had prohibited the act of begging, even the act of giving alms to the beggar. Using this extraordinary power of the law, the DM had ordered a prohibition on begging in Indore to make Indore a beggar-free city, and it also prohibited anybody from giving alms, from giving donations to the beggars. Now, there were few violations that were reported. There were few cases where beggars continued their act of begging. There were few cases where people were giving alms to the beggars. In such cases, the DM has ordered the filing of an FIR and has pushed for criminal prosecution in these cases by invoking the extraordinary power given to the DM under section 163 of Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita. This essentially is section 144 of the erstwhile CRPC. Now, what are these provisions? Should you remember all these provisions, and what is the issue being discussed here in this article? See, from the examination point of view, you don't have to by heart and mug up all these sections of BNS and BNSS. It's not necessary. But the core argument of this article, I think, is very important. Now, as I told you, section 223 and section 163 of BNS and BNSS respectively, it's an extraordinary provision. Section 163 of Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita gives this tremendous power to the DM of a district, where the DM can issue a prohibitory order. Through this order, the DM can prohibit certain activities if the grounds are met. So, for example, if let's say the administration, the district administration perceives a case of nuisance, public nuisance, or if there is a immediate apprehended danger to public order and to the society in general, if there is a need for an immediate intervention in such matters where public nuisance is being caused, or where there is an apprehended sense of danger, or if someone is obstructing the authorities, if there is a threat to health, safety, public tranquility, or if someone is looking to instigate a riot, under such specific circumstances, the DM has this extraordinary power. It was previously under the CRPC, Criminal Procedure Code, right? It was previously covered under section 144 of CRPC. Now this has moved to section 163 of BNSS. When such acts are detected by the district administration, the DM can issue a prohibitory order prohibiting that act. Any act which can be seen as public nuisance, any act which endangers public safety, any act which could disturb public tranquility, or which can be seen as an immediate danger which requires urgent intervention from the administration. Any such act can be prohibited by the DM's orders under this extraordinary provision. Now the question is, if someone violates this prohibitory order, can a FIR be filed and criminal prosecution, can it be sought against the violators? The power of the DM to seek the police to file an FIR comes from the other related provision which we were referring to, that is section 223 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which is basically section 188 of your Indian Penal Code. Under this provision, the DM can order the filing of an FIR. A police complaint can be registered seeking criminal prosecution against those who violate the prohibitory orders which were issued under section 163 of BNSS. So this is what we have seen in Indore. The DM had ordered a prohibition on begging on the grounds that it was a public nuisance, it disturbs public tranquility, and there were some violations reported, and the DM has used this extraordinary power under section 163 along with section 223 to push for filing of FIR, a police complaint seeking criminal investigation and prosecution against those who violated these norms. The writer clearly points out the legal clarity and brings out the legal clarity here that filing an FIR for these offences is not permissible under law. Pushing for criminal prosecution for a civil offence is not tenable under the legal provisions. So to understand this, we need to look at the exceptions under this law. The law says that there is a provision within the BNSS, section 215 to be specific, which previously was section 195 of CRPC. According to this provision, any violations under section 206 to 223, no court shall take cognizance of it. No court will take cognizance of these violations. This is only meant to act as a prohibitive authority or a prohibitive power of the administration with no option of any criminal prosecution. So this legal provision is basically being misinterpreted by the local administration officials. They are mixing up these two provisions where the DM has issued a prohibitory order, right, essentially under section 163 of BNS, and if violations are reported, we have seen in Indore that under section 223 of BNSS, FIRs are being filed and criminal prosecution is being pushed, which is not legally tenable according to the writer. The DM has no such authority because there are restrictions on this extraordinary power. This extraordinary power of the DM is actually restricted under section 215 of BNSS. Any violations under section 206 to 223 cannot be pushed for prosecution in a court. If at all a complaint has to be registered and prosecution has to be taken up, the authority, the concerned authority should take the approval of the court. Means the DM should submit a written document, approach the court for approval before FIRs are filed. But here the DM is directing the police to file FIRs against beggars and those who are giving alms to the beggars. It might be a civil offence to violate the DM orders, but it can't be a criminal offence. You can't file criminal charges for that. This matter is clearly established through various cases. The Supreme Court and various high courts which have dealt with this matter previously under Indian Penal Code and CRPC, they have settled this matter. It's a settled legal question. Even if DM orders are violated on these grounds, it does not constitute a criminal offence. Though it's a cognizable offence, it can't lead to filing of FIRs and criminal prosecution. You don't have to remember all the cases given here in the article. I've highlighted this for your reference, but it's not relevant from the examination point of view. If it was a constitutional matter, then yes, important cases, constitutional cases could be relevant. But this is a legal matter, so that's why I said you don't have to remember all the sections of these acts which we are discussing and the legal cases we are mentioning here. Not needed. Just understand that the powers of the DM when prohibitory orders are issued, right? Though it might constitute a cognizable offence, filing FIRs and seeking criminal prosecution is not allowed. There's a clear prohibition on that. The courts have settled this matter as well. So if, let's say, the district administration has to deal with begging, definitely it's a responsibility of the government to tackle begging, right? Beggars have to be rehabilitated. Beggars have to be given alternate livelihoods. Government has to encourage beggars to desist from the act of begging and even encourage the alms givers not to incentivize and encourage the beggars. But this has to be done through a reformative approach, not through a retributive approach. This does not account for a criminal offence. You can't treat a civil offence as a criminal offence by twisting the legal provisions. The legal question here is settled through various cases which have been handled with the Supreme Court and High Courts, that if there is a violation of these prohibitory orders issued by the DM, it can lead only to a civil case, not to a criminal case. FIRs cannot be registered for this. So this is the matter that the writer is bringing up. In the name of tackling begging, you can't criminalize the act of violating the DM's orders issued under Section 163 of BNS. Section 163 of BNS is an extraordinary power where DM can prohibit certain acts on the grounds that I mentioned, the grounds that we specified. So under Section 23 of BNSS, the question is, can FIRs be filed because of that violation? The question is very clear here. The answer is also very clear. The courts have settled this matter that FIRs cannot be filed by using the powers of Section 223 of BNSS, because any violations under Section 206 to 223 of BNSS will not lead to criminal prosecution. Section 215 provides for that exception. There is a clear exception that is placed on the extraordinary powers of the DM, and we are seeing cases of it being misused. So that is what the writer is raising his voice about. He's expressing concern about this matter, where DMs are misusing the legal provisions, and even the police seem to be willing to compromise on this matter. So if you have to tackle begging, there are other ways of doing it, right? Even if prohibitory orders are issued, if it's a violation, it's a civil violation. What beggars need is rehabilitation, livelihood opportunities, not criminal cases against them. So it defeats the very purpose of fighting begging. So just take up this practice question, whether criminal prosecution is the right approach to tackle begging. Is that the spirit of these laws? The laws doesn't prescribe such criminal prosecution. If you look at these acts, which DM can prohibit on certain grounds, it does not lead to criminal prosecution. It should not. But there have been instances on the ground where FIRs have been registered. So that is the key point you need to take down from this article. Next, on page 7, on the same page, we have an important article related to environment and ecology. This is related to ethanol production. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the usage of ethanol, the benefits of ethanol, which is blended with petrol, which is blended with fuel to reduce emissions, to bring down pollution, etc. But ethanol production, did you know, is also a big risk. It carries a number of risks associated with it, and it represents an environmental hazard, which the government apparently is ignoring according to this article. So let's understand about ethanol blending program. What's the objective of the ethanol blending program? What are the benefits and advantages? Why the government is pushing and incentivizing ethanol factories? But what are the risks and hazards associated with ethanol production? This topic is very, very important both for prelims and mains. See, in 2001, the then Vajpayee government introduced a pilot project for ethanol blended petrol. In fact, in many countries, if you've been to, let's say, West Asian countries or other countries, you'll find that petrol diesel is blended with ethanol. You get fuels such as E20, E50, E90, where ethanol blending reduces the percentage of carbon in the fuel, thus bringing down overall pollution and emissions. Because whenever a fossil fuel is burnt, it contributes to pollutants, air pollutants, and as well as emissions, carbon emissions, which contributes to global warming. So one way to bring down the release of air pollutants and emissions, carbon emissions from burning of fossil fuel, is by blending it with ethanol. So ethanol blending has been a popular initiative around the world. India also has championed the initiative, and now ethanol blending program is a very ambitious program of the government of India. In fact, in 2020, the government set an ambitious target for itself. It advanced the target of achieving 20% ethanol blending from 2030 to 2025. The initial goal of achieving ethanol 20 or E20 petrol was by 2030, by the end of the decade. But the Modi government has advanced the target. It has preponed the target to 2025. Basically, this year, across the country, ethanol 20 fuel is supposed to be available. And to ensure increased ethanol production, the government is incentivizing the ethanol industry. Because see, ethanol blending will help in reducing pollution. It will help in bringing down emissions as it reduces the carbon content. It more importantly reduces the import bill. as it will reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, on crude oil. Our crude oil requirement will go down, bringing down the import bill, thus transforming into economic benefit as well, along with environmental benefit. And the feedstock which is used to produce ethanol is primarily agricultural feedstock. Grains such as rice, then corn, even sugar, molasses, etc. They are primarily used for ethanol production, which means this could double farmers' income. It could benefit the agriculture sector as farmers can divert some of these crops towards the ethanol industry. Now see, ethanol production has already faced criticism on the grounds that it could compromise food security, because farmers who have been encouraged by the higher incentives in the ethanol industry have been diverting food crops. Edible food crops have been diverted for ethanol production, creating shortages in the food market, leading to food inflation. Food prices have jumped up, causing food security crisis. That is one end of the criticism with regard to ethanol blending. But the government says only non-edible food items can be diverted, such as broken rice, for example, or corn which is not up to mark, or molasses from the sugar industry. Specific feedstock can be diverted without affecting availability of food, without affecting food security. Certain agricultural crops can be diverted towards ethanol production. But however, these ethanol industries which have received a lot of support from the government, they are responsible for large scale pollution. These environmental side effects have not been accounted for. Though it helps in bringing down carbon emissions and air pollutants, the very act of producing ethanol in these ethanol factories is leading to an environmental disaster in many parts of the country. Now, if you look at the distribution of ethanol factories in the country, they are mainly concentrated in Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Punjab and Haryana. These are the states which have the highest number of ethanol factories in the country. They have got a lot of subsidies from the government, a lot of incentives and support. They have also got easy environmental clearance. Because see, the government is very ambitious about the target of ethanol blending. It has advanced the target as well. It wants to achieve ethanol 20 by 2025, which means we need 1,000 crore plus liters of ethanol, and that requires hundreds of factories producing ethanol day by day across the country. So to ensure more ethanol factories are set up, government created a lot of subsidies and incentives. The government even fast-tracked the environmental clearance given without accounting for the environmental risks and hazards associated with ethanol production. Scientists, farmers and several civil society groups have raised the concern, but the government has been ignoring this. So what are these environmental concerns and hazards? Let's understand. When ethanol is produced in these factories, especially when grain is used as a feedstock, like rice, broken rice for example, the effluents that are released, they're often released untreated into the nearby water bodies. This causes significant water pollution. These ethanol factories are releasing untreated effluents. They are not investing in pollution control technologies. Untreated discharge, which contains harmful, hazardous products, are being released directly into the nearby canals, rivers, lakes, and even fed into the groundwater table. Ethanol factories are over consuming the groundwater as well, which is a violation of the rules. Groundwater is not supposed to be used for ethanol production, but there are many factories in East Godavari, in Andhra Pradesh, where such cases have been reported. That's why farmers are protesting in Andhra Pradesh against these projects, against ethanol factories. Scientific studies have established that some of the effluents contain cancer-causing chemicals, which is a direct byproduct of ethanol production. Acetaldehyde, formaldehyde and acrolein. These are cancer-causing chemical agents which are known to be byproducts of ethanol production. They are being released untreated into the environment, polluting our water, our soil, and as well as the groundwater table. Now, this poses a serious health risk. It is a serious environmental hazard. And also, ethanol production is very water intensive. Crops like rice, paddy cultivation is very water intensive. If you're diverting a part of the rice production towards ethanol production, then water consumption, which is very high, will keep on increasing. The demand for water keeps on increasing for paddy cultivation, which puts a stress on the water availability. It could divert water availability from other crops. These plants and distilleries that produce and process and handle ethanol, they themselves consume a lot of water. Studies have established that they fall under the red category as far as the pollution index is concerned, with a score of 60 and above, which means they are highly polluting industries. They take up 8 to 12 liters of water to produce 1 liter of ethanol. Studies have clearly established that 1 liter production of ethanol requires 8 to 12 liters of water. So this has put stress on availability of water, diverted water from agriculture, and farmers are struggling in these belts, especially in East Godavari and the Krishna districts of Andhra Pradesh, where irrigation based farming is the lifeline of the farmers. In Punjab, Haryana, Maharashtra as well, similar cases have come up. Cancer causing chemicals have been detected in the effluents. Effluents are being released untreated, polluting the water and soil and the groundwater. Groundwater is being exhausted, and upon that, it's a water guzzling industry which is destroying water availability, diverting water away from mainstream agriculture. So these environmental hazards have not been accounted for. In fact, attempts have also been made to dismiss these concerns. Even if scientific evidence has been presented, Environment Ministry has largely ignored the concerns, and the government continues to focus on ethanol blending. See, ethanol blending definitely has many advantages, but you need to account for the side effects as well. There are hazards, environmental hazards associated with ethanol production. Now let's look at few small updates, important updates that we have in today's newspaper. On the front page, we have an article related to delimitation. Delimitation is the act of drawing up electoral constituencies, and a big controversy has broken out over the upcoming delimitation exercise, where South Indian states have expressed alarm that if only population is used as a criteria, as per the upcoming census data, then many South Indian states could lose out some of the seats, the representation they have in the Lok Sabha. Because eventually parliamentary representation is dependent on the population. Because through the delimitation exercise, the delimitation commission will try to ensure that roughly each electoral constituency has roughly the same population, right, to ensure fair representation. But if this method is used to carry out delimitation, then South Indian states which have done well with regard to family planning programs, which have managed to stabilize their population, bring down their total fertility rate, they will be essentially punished, penalized, as they can stand to lose certain seats in the Lok Sabha, which will reduce their representation and their weight in the parliament. Now, this is something that has been raised by Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, essentially those states which have seen a stabilization of their population, which are also seeing a declining population as well in the coming years, right? Those states have a fear that delimitation could harm them, as other states like UP, Bihar, which have not focused on family planning, which have increased their population over the decades, they might get more additional seats, further increasing their political clout. So this is not just about the political divide which will come up, it's also about the economic divide it's going to create. Eventual financial allocations will also depend on the population size. So South Indian states have been raising this concern, and with regard to the concern raised by South Indian chief ministers, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has assured that South India will not lose even a single Lok Sabha seat because of the new delimitation which is going to be carried out. But however, this does not answer the question, because see, South Indian states have certain arguments. One argument is that it's not just about losing seats or retaining the current number of seats. Now let's assume seats that are right now given for Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala remains the same, but seats for UP, Bihar goes up. Then that is also unfair. That is also seen as a divide, which will increase the political clout of the other states. If population is the only basis, and population data will be taken from which census, that is also a big question. The Prime Minister has promised that on a pro rata basis, delimitation will be carried out to ensure no South Indian state loses even a single Lok Sabha seat. But the question is, what is the meaning of pro rata basis here? Does it mean the current levels of population or the number of existing seats that the state has in the parliament as of now. There is no clarity given by the central government on this regard. Then, South Indian states are arguing, especially Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has pointed out that even if seats for Tamil Nadu and other South Indian states are retained at the same level, even if they don't lose a single seat, if North Indian states get more seats because of their higher population, and if population is taken as the only criteria here, then even this is a disadvantage for South Indian states. So they're complaining that their success in family planning, in stabilizing the population, has become a curse. It has become a burden for them, as now they might be penalized with lower representation in the parliament. So this hot topic has been brought up, and Home Minister Amit Shah has tried addressing these concerns by pointing out that South Indian states will not lose a single Lok Sabha seat, as the PM has promised that the delimitation will be done on a pro rata basis. But this requires more clarification from the government, whether current population levels will be considered or population data from 1971 census will be considered. That is the demand South Indian states have. They want 1971 census data to be treated as a parameter for delimitation, right? Because any fresh census will clearly show lesser population in South Indian states because of their family planning initiatives, and significantly higher population in other states, in North Indian states, which have failed in family planning programs, which have not stabilized their population. So they might get rewarded, whereas South Indian states might get penalized. So this is the controversial issue being explored in this article, and it only gives us this update that the central government is looking to ensure that South Indian states don't lose out a single Lok Sabha seat. But South Indian leaders have raised a valid counterpoint. It's not about losing a seat. Even if current seats are maintained, what if other states get more seats? Their political clout and representation will increase, which will still create the divide. If PM has promised a pro rata basis for delimitation, what is that pro rata basis? That clarity is necessary. So this is a developing story. We need to keep tracking this development. Next, another update. A number of petitions have been filed at the Supreme Court seeking a ban on politicians who have been convicted from contesting elections. Civil society groups, along with few petitioners, have approached the Supreme Court. A batch of petitions have been taken up for consideration, and these petitioners are calling for a lifetime ban, a permanent ban on convicted politicians from contesting elections. If a politician is convicted of a serious crime or serious offense, right, currently there are few restrictions with regard to their eligibility for elections. But the petitioners are calling for a lifetime ban, a permanent ban, so that our politics can be decriminalized, so that criminal elements can be eliminated from the political system itself. And the Supreme Court is considering this matter. In this ongoing case, you should know what is the stand of the Government of India on this matter. The consul representing the Government of India has argued against this demand. The government has basically argued that a lifetime ban on convicted politicians from contesting elections is unfair. It's grossly unfair and unjust. It is disproportionate. Why? Because see, currently under Representation of People Act 1951, under Section 8, those who are convicted, they are not only debarred from the House for the entire term, but they can't stand for elections for 6 years thereafter. So there is already a restriction on convicted criminal politicians. They can't stand for elections not only for that entire term, they're suspended from the House as well, they lose their seat as well, right? Let's say there's a MP or a MLA and they get convicted in certain crimes as defined under the Act, and they stand to be disqualified. It becomes a ground for disqualification. They can't contest elections until they serve their term, the prison term, whatever punishment is delivered by the courts. They can't contest elections during the jail term which they are serving, and 6 years thereafter, 6 years after the punishment has been served, they can't contest elections. That is the current restriction on criminal politicians who have been convicted. Now the petitioners are asking for a lifetime ban, so that even former criminals are never allowed into our political process, into our political system. But the government is trying to defend them by pointing out a lifetime ban can be unfair and unjust, because these convicted criminals would have already served a jail term as per the punishment delivered by the court. Now, why should they be penalized after the jail term has been served, and anyways they are prohibited from contesting elections for 6 more years. This is where the government of India also has a valid point that this could be unfair and unjust. Because after serving the jail term plus 6 years ban on elections, contesting elections, if you try to place a lifetime ban, this could become unfair. It could become disproportionate. So it's an ongoing case. We can continue to track this matter. So it's a very important issue being raised regarding decriminalization of our politics. Let me know what you think. Should we allow convicted criminals to contest, or should there be a lifetime ban? Are the current restrictions enough? Anyways, they can't contest elections when they are in jail, when they have been convicted. Plus, there is a 6-year ban thereafter. Is that enough as per the provisions of Representation of People Act? Or do you think a lifetime ban is justified on criminal politicians? Let me know in the comments. Next, on page 12, there's an article related to Panchayati Raj institutions. Panchayati Raj institutions that was set up through the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1992 represented a major grassroots reform that introduced the 3-tiered governance at the grassroots level. It rolled out the Panchayat system, introducing the 3-tiered local governance model, providing for decentralized participative governance in our country with constitutional status. So at the district level, you have your Zilla Panchayats. At the Taluk level, at the block level, you have your Taluk Panchayats, then or the Tehsil Panchayats, and finally you have your Gram Panchayats at the village level. One of the transformative constitutional reforms that we have ever carried out. Now, under this system, the PRI system that was rolled out, the constitutional amendment mandates a reservation for women. It provides for 1/3 seats to be reserved for women at all the levels of the Panchayat. Many states and union territories have gone beyond this, providing up to 50% reservation for women. 21 states and UTs have gone beyond the constitutionally mandated 1/3 reservation, and they have given 50% reservation. Thanks to this landmark reform and this provision, out of the 3.2 million elected Panchayat representatives in the country, almost 46% of them are women. Now, this is quite remarkable. Out of the 3.2 million elected Panchayat representatives across the country, close to 46% of them are women, which means women participation in our Panchayati system has gone up. They are in leadership positions. They are in decision-making roles. But however, the ground reality is slightly different. In most of the cases, these seats reserved for women candidates, it's usually their husbands, their fathers, their brothers who contest as a proxy. They just put up the women of the household as a proxy just to fill the reserved seats. But the real authority and real decisions are still taken by the male member of the house. This is a gross violation of the constitutional provision. It's a derailment of the Panchayati Raj system itself. Many such cases have been seen where women Panchayat leaders and Sarpanch leaders who are women, they're acting as just proxies for their husbands or fathers or their brothers. Clearly, the men of the household are controlling the women and they're acting as proxies with no real powers and decision-making authority. So this does not lead to real empowerment of women at the grassroots. This has been a fundamental problem with the Panchayati Raj system. Now, to address these concerns, the government had constituted a panel. An expert committee had been set up to give some recommendations on how we could address this problem, where male members who are politically influential simply put up proxies, women of their household as proxies, just to fill the reserved seats, whereas the men really control the decisions and take the authority into their hand. So this is essentially a derailment of the Panchayati Raj system and decentralization itself. It affects women empowerment, doesn't lead to true women empowerment. Though 46% of Panchayat representatives are women, majority of them are just proxy candidates, acting as proxies for their husbands and brothers and fathers. So this panel has given some recommendations which the government is considering. So what are these recommendations? The panel has recommended a series of measures. Some structural changes in the way in which reservation is implemented, better monitoring at the grassroots with better use of technology to prevent the usage of women candidates as a proxy, and incentives and penalties, very strict exemplary punishments for those male members for misusing the policy of reservation and putting up their women candidates as proxies and indirectly controlling power. So this is a system that has been proposed, a system of better monitoring to detect such cases where proxy candidates are put up, then better technological interventions to monitor such misuse of the provisions, and a system of incentive and a system of exemplary punishment to act as deterrents. So it's not clear what exactly the punishment entails, whether it should be like a physical punishment like a jail term, or it should be a pecuniary punishment like a heavy penalty, heavy fine. That's not clear. That's up to the government to decide. But the panel has recommended very strict punishments in such proxy cases where male members of the household are simply putting up women as proxies and controlling the decisions behind. So exemplary punishments as a deterrence, along with some incentives and a better structure to empower women candidates who get elected. For example, in Kerala government has a practice where even the panchayat subject committees that are constituted, they have a mandatory gender quota. For different subjects that are dealt with by the panchayats, there are different expert committees. So women candidates have a reservation even there, which ensures guaranteed women participation and empowers the women candidates to participate in the subject committee hearings. So this model can be followed across the country. The gender-based quota formula, which is followed in the panchayat subject committees. Then making the women candidates take the oath, the swearing in publicly in front of the entire village, in front of the entire panchayat. That reinforces their authority, their position, gives them more confidence to act on their own instead of just acting as proxies for their husbands, fathers and brothers. Such practices are seen in some states, like in Karnataka, for example. Women candidates are made to take the oath, the swearing in publicly in front of the entire panchayat, just to reinforce and establish their authority so that women candidates feel more confident about themselves. They don't have to be proxies for the male members in their house. They can keep the male interference out and ensure they can act on their own. Such practices can be encouraged to incentivize greater women participation and ensure that real authority lies with the women representatives and not with the male members. Now coming to the prelim section, let's go through the small articles quickly and then we can wrap up today's class. Ukraine and US have agreed on preliminary basis for a mineral deal, a mineral accord. As you know, US President Donald Trump has made it a priority to bring the Ukraine war to an end. Ever since he came to power, he has reached out to Russia, held a conversation with Russian leader Putin, and even pointed fingers at Ukraine and NATO and European countries for instigating Russia to go to war. He has even said that he will stop all the military aid and financial aid and support to Ukraine. In fact, Trump has been saying this since his election campaign. And as he promised, he has started delivering on this commitment that why should US pay for Ukraine security or European security? So Trump has made this conditional right now that Ukraine has received billions of dollars in military aid and assistance. Up to $250 billion plus funds have been given out from the US along with military support and defense platforms. Now he is asking Ukraine to pay back. He's not only reaching out to Russia to strike a peace deal by excluding Ukraine and Europe out of it, and US and Russia have parallelly begun negotiations on a peace agreement as well. And he has also blackmailed Ukraine that Ukrainian interests will not even be considered if Ukraine does not hand over the critical minerals it has, especially the rare earth minerals. Essentially, Trump is blackmailing Ukraine that if Ukraine's sovereignty and interests have to be protected in the upcoming peace deal that US and Russia are working out, then Ukraine has to hand over its vast critical mineral resources. According to reports, Ukraine is blessed with critical mineral resources, especially rare earth minerals, which find key applications in various industries. From defense to space, aerospace industry to electronics industry, rare earth minerals find multiple applications. It's part of the critical strategic minerals, which the countries around the world are hunting for. So US is looking to gain an advantage here for the $250 billion plus aid and support that US has given. It's trying to extract that back in the form of critical minerals and access to these rare earth minerals. So Ukraine obviously has fallen under the American pressure, and Ukrainian leader Zelensky has made a preliminary agreement with the US. Zelensky is all set to visit the US to meet Trump at the White House and work out the final contours of the deal. But the preliminary agreement has been finalized where Ukraine has committed that it is willing to give up access to critical minerals to the US so that it can mine the rare earth minerals. Of course, the final deal will have to be approved by the Ukrainian parliament as well. But the preliminary deal has been finalized between US and Ukraine, according to reports. So this might give US access to billions of dollars worth of rare earth minerals, which are mainly found in eastern parts of Ukraine, in the Donbas region, which actually is under Russian occupation. So depending on how US and Russia work out a peace deal, US might either secure Ukrainian sovereignty and keep access for critical minerals for itself, or it might share the occupied territory, Russian occupied territory, with Russia, and both US and Russia might look to harvest the critical minerals for themselves. In fact, Russia has already said that it is willing to collaborate with US in case of a peace deal to mine critical minerals in the region. So they might end up dividing the occupied areas, right? Russia might essentially retain the annexed territories in eastern Ukraine with itself, and Ukraine's sovereignty will get compromised, and in the other mineral rich areas, US will get mineral access, which will compromise Ukrainian interests and could benefit only US and Russia at the end of the day. So this primary deal, a preliminary accord, has been worked out, but it has to be yet finalized. So it might be finalized during Zelensky's visit to the United States. Next, on page 14, the United Nations has praised India's contribution to UN peacekeeping efforts. The Ministry of External Affairs has been organizing a conference, Women in Peacekeeping, a Global South Perspective. Because women peacekeepers have played a pivotal role in UN peacekeeping missions, and India is one of the biggest contributors. In fact, India became one of the first countries to send an entire women contingent to UN peacekeeping missions. So during this conference, the global leaders who have participated, the UN officials, etc., they've all praised India's role as a troop contributing country. Now, this is where you need to understand some important facts. See, as of now, India is the fourth largest troop contributing country, after countries like Nepal, Rwanda and Bangladesh. Currently, Nepal happens to be the largest troop contributor, followed by Rwanda and then Bangladesh. India comes at the fourth place, as we have around 5,466 Indians who are part of UN peacekeeping missions. Out of them, 5,046 personnel are military personnel drawn from our armed forces and paramilitary forces. Historically as well, India has been one of the largest troop contributing countries. We have participated in a number of peacekeeping missions since 1950s, and till date we have contributed more than 2 lakh personnel, making India the top contributor to UN peacekeeping missions. India has suffered the highest number of casualties. More than 170 casualties have been reported. More than 170 Indian soldiers have been killed during these peacekeeping missions. The number is somewhere around 178 to 179 Indian soldiers killed. And that makes India a country which has made the biggest contribution to peacekeeping missions. Now, we have a major problem, the way in which peacekeeping missions are managed. That's why India organizes these conferences. We are bringing the global south countries together to debate about the role of women peacekeepers and in general peacekeeping missions, because troop contributing countries don't have any decision making powers with regard to the deployment of peacekeeping forces and their safety. This authority lies entirely with the UN Security Council, which means the P5 countries which hold the veto, the 5 permanent members of UNSC. They have the sole authority to decide upon the deployment of peacekeeping missions and ensure the safety and guarantee the well-being of the peacekeepers. So troop contributing countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Philippines, Kenya, Ethiopia, they're all together in calling for greater decision-making powers. As part of UN reforms, we are pushing for this change as well, so that troop contributing countries will get to have a say, will get to take a decision on the deployment and safety and well-being of the peacekeepers. So for this purpose, we have even started an initiative. Can you find out which is this initiative started by India to raise the voice of the troop contributing countries, and mention that in the comment section below. Recently, we have launched a global initiative. A new group has been created by India. Can you find out what is this initiative and mention that in the comments? Now, coming to the last two articles, on the supplement page of the Science and Tech edition, there are few interesting articles. This article helps us understand the side effects of coal-fired power plants, the thermal power plants, and how it is affecting our agriculture. So, very important for your prelims. Combustion of coal in our thermal plants is releasing number of pollutants which is affecting agricultural production, and yield has declined by 10% in states like Punjab, UP, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal. In all these major agricultural states, rice production, wheat production has declined by 10%, and this has been attributed to the pollutants released from thermal power plants which are powered by coal. Because combustion of coal releases a lot of emissions and pollutants, including carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxide, fly ash, soot, and even particulate matter. While this contributes to global warming, it contributes to smog conditions, it even results in acid rain and eutrophication. These deadly environmental hazards, they have a huge impact on agriculture. And don't forget, nitrogen oxides, they are phytotoxic, meaning they cause stress on the plants. This is one of the biggest side effects of coal-fired thermal power plants. The nitrogen oxides, which are phytotoxic, can cause cellular damage to the plant tissue, and it worsens the crop productivity. So crop yield has declined by 10% according to a study because of the side effects of coal-fired thermal power plants. Coming to the last article, it's related to the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, which was established after the Rio Earth Summit to protect global biodiversity. The Rio Earth Summit of 92, it gave birth to UN Climate Change Convention to deal with climate change and global warming. It also gave birth to Convention on Biological Diversity to protect our biodiversity. It also gave birth to the UN Convention on Combating Desertification to tackle desertification. The Convention on Biological Diversity, it has tried to come out with a global framework to protect nature and biodiversity around the world. Recently, COP16, Conference of Parties 16, was held to the Convention on Biological Diversity at Cali in Colombia. We have discussed this topic as well. The Cali CBD Summit. So following the discussions that took place at Cali, renewed talks have started under COP16 in Rome under the leadership of the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is one of the specialized agencies of the UN. So COP16 has resumed, fresh talks have resumed to work out a fund, to work out basically the finances for biodiversity conservation and protection. See, under the CBD, a couple of years ago in 2022, a global target was adopted called the Kunming-Montreal Framework. We have studied the Kunming-Montreal Framework in previous classes as well. Under the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, countries have adopted a target known as the 30 by 30 target. That is, by 2030, they are seeking to conserve and protect 30% of the land area and sea area. The 30 by 30 target declared through Kunming-Montreal Protocol of 2022. The goal is to protect 30% of the land ecosystems and 30% of the marine ecosystems by 2030. Now, this will require finances. It requires money, especially finances to flow from developed countries to developing nations. Now, developing countries such as Brazil, African countries, they have been demanding higher funds, flow of funds from developed nations to the global south. The UN believes at least $200 billion in funding is necessary to achieve the 30 by 30 target. And this would require at least $30 billion in support coming from developed industrialized nations such as let's say France, Germany, Japan, etc., flowing towards developing nations like India, Brazil, and African countries. So this is what the leaders are discussing at the renewed COP16, which is now taking place in Rome. The initial COP16 was held in Cali, Colombia. Now the renewed talks have started again under the leadership of Food and Agriculture Organization at Rome. That is where FAO is headquartered. So fresh talks have begun regarding the financing arrangement to finance the 30 by 30 target. Now please note down the last point, a very, very important point for your prelims. During the renewed talks at Rome, under the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP16 has led to the launch of a new fund known as the Cali Fund. It was proposed at Cali in Colombia. Now this fund has been launched just the other day. Yesterday it has been launched. This will mobilize private sector contribution for biodiversity conservation and protection. To bring companies, big corporations together and push them to mobilize funds for biodiversity conservation, the Cali Fund has been launched. It was proposed at Cali, Colombia during COP16 negotiations that took place few months ago. Now it has been officially launched at Rome when the COP16 talks have resumed under the leadership of the FAO. So this is what you need to learn from today's newspaper. 10 important articles with a number of facts, analysis, and some subtopics as well. I hope it's been an interesting and useful discussion. And on this note, I would like to bring today's session to an end. If you like the session, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.